Hello and welcome to News of the Week. This week, I want to get back to a theme that we have been talking about in the past and I have written about, and we're talking about it also in our mentoring sessions, and that has to do with diversification. As you know, the vast majority of our assets, I always propose, should be in residential real estate. I personally have about 70% of all our assets in residential real estate. But then there's also the question, how do we diversify? And the areas of diversify that I recommend are all in a context of having value and being in some way, shape, or form not directly related to inflation. So this week, one of the interesting things that I find has come through as kind of like the trigger to talk about it in News of the Week is the fact that Bitcoin has gone over $30,000 per coin again, after having been way higher. Like I think the highest it ever got was like $70,000, and the lowest in the last like 2 years has been $10,000. So it has kind of come back up to 30,000 and above. But the important thing, why I even want to mention it, is, as I have said, from the diversification perspective, we want to have 70% in our main asset. I would recommend 10% in gold and silver coins, then maybe a little bit in stocks and similar things, or you might also like art. And I personally have a little bit for diversification in Bitcoin myself. And so I wanted to address that. And part of the aspect of Bitcoin is because I'm very convinced of a few things that I wanted to share with you. The first one is that the underlying technology of blockchain, I believe, will revolutionize the way money is exchanged in the future. We have heard about digital bank currencies or coins, like the Fed of New York wants to come out with, China wants to come out with one, BRICS wants to come out with one. So there are all kinds of initiatives to get more and more to digital money. And Bitcoin is, in a sense, digital money. But the underlying technology of blockchain is also very important, because if you look today, and I want to reiterate this because this week, with the rise about the $30,000 level, it becomes an important thing. But today, if you do a wire transfer, let's say somewhere from the United States to somewhere in Europe, yes, it takes maybe 72 hours until you actually see the numbers in your bank account. But when you look in the background and ask yourself, okay, if you could interview the bank, when do you really have final assurance that the money has really transferred from the one bank account in the United States to another bank account? And it could even be your own bank account with two different banks. It takes currently about 3 months. And the reason for that is that there's a super ancient system in the background. Now, you will say potentially, well, haven't I heard all this crazy stuff about Bitcoin and FTX and corrupt people and so forth? But you have to keep in mind, cryptocurrencies, there are like 20,000 or something like that. Most of them have very tiny, narrow niches. And only the really big ones, and this is kind of like the same like with cell phones, right? Like you have Android and Apple, and that's pretty much it. And we have many technologies where in the end there's only like 1, 2, maybe a handful of different ones that are actually surviving, and all the other ones that came first. So what is an indicator that we're getting to a certain level of maturity? And that indicator happened this week, and that's why I picked this up for a topic for this week. One of the indicators is when the very biggest of management organization, BlackRock, which is by far the largest organization managing other people's money, is starting to invest in setting up an exchange for Bitcoin. And then Charles Schwab got on it, and then Deutsche Bank got on it, and then S&P 500 got on it. So when all these really big institutions jump on it, then we see that that is a sign of a certain level of confidence that this is actually going somewhere, and that it's not just a fly-by-wire thing. And by the way, Bitcoin is also around for quite a while. So I don't want to say you have to have Bitcoin or you should invest in Bitcoin. This is not really investing advice. But for News of the Week, I wanted you to become aware, number one, that the value has gone back to something that is more in the mid-range, that where I think it belongs, and probably will grow from there. But more importantly, that really the biggest money management organizations in the world are now kind of coming on board and saying, okay, we need to find a way to exchange money amongst people better. And with Bitcoin, when you send Bitcoin through the system, then you have your money truly acknowledged, truly booked within less than a minute, typically in milliseconds, but definitely less than a minute and not 3 months. And the question will be, who will be the first organizations who make that a system So nobody has to be unsure for 3 months if the money is really there. So that's why it's important for us to realize. And like I said, having maybe one Bitcoin as a reserve, who never knows, we never know how the future will evolve and what will come out. But I believe Bitcoin is not going to go away. And if it really skyrockets, well, then it's great. It's like a home run. If it doesn't, you have it as an alternative currency that you can probably use more and more places around the world or exchange for local currencies. So that's why I like it as a part of the diversification portfolio. But be aware, take a look at the articles that you find, and also be aware the US government has recently basically made it a case that sounds like, okay, all the players in the cryptocurrency space are wrong, but it's actually not the case. It is actually that more and more of the bigger players are coming on board. So that's the news. If you're a subscriber, please hit the like button, give it a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. And if you hear this as a podcast, then please download and give us comments so I know what else to bring to you in the future. Thank you. Be well, stay safe, and I talk to you next week.